Matchweek 3 of the Premier League cast serious cold water on the existing three-team title fight narrative, but perhaps created a different one instead, with surprising results all over the shop. Let's get into it. Chelsea hosted Fulham in the early kickoff on Saturday. Chelsea made no changes from the win over West Ham, despite my prediction that Reece James would replace Malo Gusto. As predicted, Fulham were also unchanged, with Josh King and Rodrigo Muniz staying ahead of Emil Smith-Rowe and Raul Jimenez, respectively. Fulham won possession in Chelsea's third, but Joachim Andersen's effort was high and wide. On the break, Sander Berger found King with a through ball, and despite Tosin Adarabioyo catching up, King managed to turn and fire home. However, in the build-up, Rodrigo Muniz brought down Trevor Chalobah on the turn, and the goal was disallowed. In injury time, King cut back to find Timothy Castagna, but the Belgian's effort was blocked by a slide by Moises Caicedo. From an Enzo Fernandez corner, João Pedro rose and headed in the opener. In the second half, a Chalobah ball hit Sessegnon in the hand, but play continued, with Caicedo dragging a shot wide. After a VAR check, however, the penalty was awarded. Fernandez put it down the middle, and though Ben Leno's trailing leg got something on it, it went in. In injury time, an Andersen header took a small touch off Berger, but was cleared off the line by Pedro. It finished 2-0 Chelsea. Sometimes decisions change games, and it's fair to say Marco Silva's team can feel very unfortunate. The goal disallowed led to referees chief Howard Webb publicly admitting a mistake, and it seems like the whole media are against the decision. I can see why it was disallowed, because there was a coming together. The handball is also unlucky, with Sessegnon just sticking his hand out in an attempt, he would say, to cover his face. If King's goal stood and there was no penalty, and nothing else changed, it was finished 1-1. Fulham were all over Chelsea in the first half, but let's give the Blues credit. You played to the whistle, they weathered the storm, and then took their chance from a corner. Much has been said about Arsenal's proficiency from corners this season, but their London rivals have even more goals from them than them, with 4 compared to the Gunners' 3. Pedro stepped up and now has 2 goals and 2 assists, excelling in his new role as a 10 behind Liam Delap. Delap came off injured in this one, and it'll be interesting to see whether Pedro returns to the 9 spot, where he was ineffective against Crystal Palace, or stays as a 10 in Delap's absence. Cole Palmer, hopefully returning soon enough, will surely have something to say about it, but right now the Blues actually look better in the games he missed. For Fulham, tough luck. They were impressive in this game after looking a bit hit or miss in their opener against Brighton, but ultimately got their first loss of the season and still haven't won in the league. Let's move on to the 4:3 p.m. games, starting with Man United against Burnley. I thought United would go unchanged from their draw with Fulham, but in fact, Diogo Dalot came in for Patrick Dorgu. I was right that Altay Bayindir would still be ahead of Andre Onana, and that Mason Mount would beat Benjamin Šeško to a spot. I correctly predicted that Burnley would be unchanged, with Jakob Brun-Larsen staying ahead in the pecking order of Oliver Sonner. A Kyle Walker clearance was blocked by Mount, and there was a coming together between the pair. A penalty was given, but VAR ruled that there was no foul, and chalked it off. From a Bruno Fernandes free kick, Casemiro's header hit the bar, bounced off Josh Cullen, and though Martin Dubravka tried to claw it out, it had already crossed the line to give United the lead. In injury time, a counter-attack led to Brian Mbeumo cutting back to Amad Diallo, but he put what can only be described as a sitter over. In the second half, a Brun-Larsen cross was poked in by Lyle Foster to level things. A long ball by Bayindir was headed on and found Dalot, who drove forward to get free of Hjalmar Ekdal and then cut back to Mbeumo in space, who fired home. A long throw-in fell to Loum Chawana, whose first shot was saved by Bayindir, but his tame parry fell to Jadon Anthony, whose shot bounced off Mainu and Bayindir before going in. But as it was on target, was given as his goal. In injury time, Fernandes targeted Diallo, who went down. After a VAR check, it was shown that Anthony pulled down Diallo's shirt, and a penalty was given. From the pen, Dubravka guessed the right way, but Fernandes' shot was too low and accurate to stop it, and it gave United a 3-2 win. Yes, it wasn't pretty, but ultimately Man United got their first win of the season. If they were wearing a slightly different shade of red, it might be written that great teams find a way to win when the chips are down or whatever. But alas, most will say it is a reprieve for Ruben Amorim, and they are right. If that penalty wasn't given or didn't go in, he would probably be under big jeopardy during the international break. But United huffed and puffed and finally got their pen, blowing the house down as there was huge relief and cheers at Old Trafford. That doesn't change the fact that their overall problems don't seem solved. Matheus Cunha came off injured, and it is interesting that he was not replaced by Benjamin Šeško, but Joshua Zirkzee. Šeško and Cunha are yet to score, but at least Brian Mbeumo has his first cup goal after scoring, but then missing the decisive penalty in a shootout in their embarrassing Carabao Cup exit at the hands of Grimsby Town. They conceded two completely needless goals against what is, I think, possibly the worst team in the league. Bryn Larson was completely unmarked for the first, and Boyendir has to be stronger for the second, which came for a long throw of all things. As for Burnley, if you want to stay up and get enough points, you have to convert opportunities. They could have come away with something, but Jaden Anthony, who did well in scoring their second goal, needlessly pulled down Diallo in injury time, meaning their hard work was for nothing. In a way, it's reassuring that Burnley was able to compete in this one, but ultimately you need the points to stay up. 3 game weeks in, and for United, there are real problems despite that win here. For Burnley, they're competing in this division, but I still find it hard to see them staying up. In the next 3 p.m. game, Sunderland hosted Brentford. I was right that Nordi Mukiele would replace Dan Ballard and that Omar Alderete would keep his spot over Jensen Selt, but I didn't foresee Simon Adingra being dropped for Enzo Lefebvre. I did get the Brentford team right, though, correctly guessing that it would be unchanged. A corner hit the arm of Michael Coyote, play was waved on, and after a bit of pinball, Eliezer Mayenda fired over. Replay showed Coyote's arm in a natural position. An effort from just outside the box by Alderete had the sting absorbed by Nathan Collins. From a cross, Reynaldo Mandava held on to Collins and brought him down, earning a penalty and a yellow card. However, Kevin Sharda's effort was saved by Robin Roofs. From a low Lefebvre cross, Wilson Isidore missed the ball, and Habib Diarra snatched at it, putting it wide. A Frank Onyeka cross was headed down by Igor Thiago, bouncing off the floor, onto the bar, and in. From a corner, Rico Henry was all over Diarra, holding him and pulling him to the ground, earning a penalty and a booking. Lefay sent Queeman Kelleher the wrong way to equalise. In injury time, a granite jack across found Isidore, being played onside by Henry, whose header was too hot for Kelleher to handle for a late winner. Ah, how smug I was a week ago. I predicted big spending Sunderland to go down and much maligned Brentford to stay up easily. But Brentford had lost and Sunderland had won in the first week. Did I crack or bravely stick to my ideals? I was rewarded for my prediction when Sunderland lost to fellow new arrivals Burnley, while Brentford prevailed over Europa League Aston Villa. Yes! I'm so smart, my football knowledge is the best, and the Philistines who thought otherwise are wrong. Then this happens. To be honest, I would still say that this is 6 points, and Sunderland will need maybe 30 more to stay up. But at this time last season, we were hearing things like, well, it's only game week 3, the promoted teams will settle in, and they never did. Sunderland look like they have the right to be at this level, but even now, I'd still be very cautious about them. As for Brentford, their win last week is looking like saying more about Aston Villa than themselves. However, Sunderland have looked good at home, and I still think it's a bit too early to write the bees off. You have to be good to stay up in this division, but even without scoring the penalty, which could have changed the game, they're still just seconds away from a point on the road. They're fine. Spurs hosted Bournemouth, and as predicted, the Lily Whites were unchanged, with Rodrigo Bentancur keeping his spot ahead of Lucas Bergvall. Bournemouth were unchanged too, and I got that one right as well. A Marcos Senesi through ball found Evan Nilsson, whose effort deflected off of Christian Romero and in. Evan Nilsson then got the ball in the D but fired wide. A David Brooks cross found Antoine Semenyo, who had a free header but put it over. Brooks tried to catch Guglielmo Vicario from a long free kick, but Vicario made the save. In the second half, a Marcus Tavernier header found Semenyo, whose powerful effort forced another Vicario save. From a Semenyo long throw-in that was punched away by Vicario, Mohamed Kudus and Senesi went for the same ball, with the Argentine going down. The penalty shouts waved away, it fell to Evan Nilsson, who saw his effort smothered by Vicario, before passing back to Brooks, whose own shot was deflected onto the bar by Jed Spence. When Spurs finally got our way, Semenyo brought down Richarlison, who looked to break, but no second yellow was given. An Evan Nilsson through ball found Brooks, leading to another Vicario save. A rare chance for Spurs fell to Bergvall, but it was straight at George Petrovic. In injury time, a Spence cross was fired wide by Matthias Tell, but it was too late for Tottenham. Wow, wow, wow. Let's start with Bournemouth. Normally, under Andoni Iraola, the Cherries start slow and then grow into the season, but here they've come out of the gates. They look good in the loss at Anfield and then won 2 on the bounce. Thomas Frank is one of the most highly rated managers in the Premier League, but he had no answers as Bournemouth pressed him into submission. Tottenham offered absolutely nothing, and they were lucky to lose this game 1-0 with Vicario to thank. Just as Spurs were starting to convince people that they were a serious team again with a brilliant win at the Etihad, they're not just defeated by, but played off the park by Iraola's Cherries. An absolutely fantastic result for Bournemouth, and it won't be their first scalp this season. In the final 3 p.m. game, Wolves hosted Everton. Santiago Bueno replaced Matt Doherty, which I didn't see happening, While I considered but ultimately did not go with Hugo Bueno coming in for David Müller-Wolfer. I did correctly guess Andre replacing Jean-Rick Bellegarde and Hwang Hee-chan coming in for Jurgen Strand-Larsen over Sasa Kalajic, and Marshall Monetsi keeping his place over Fer Lopez. For Everton, I predicted that Vitaly Mykolenko would replace Timo Robenham, with James Garner moving up, but I didn't think Beto would come in for Tieno Barry. A Mykolenko cross was headed on by Jack Grealish, being played onside by Santiago Bueno, and Beto headed home to give Everton the lead. For a first-time low cross by Monetsi, the Everton defence fell asleep and Hwang fired in the equaliser. A Kiernan Dewsbury Hall cutback was dummied by Beto and fired in by Iliman Ndiaye. In the second half, Wolves gave it away in their own third. Grealish played it forwards to find Dewsbury Hall, whose brilliant effort went in off the bar at Jose Sar's near post. A cross by Müller-Wolfer saw both Michael Keane and Mykolenko dawdle, and Rodrigo Gomes ran in and fired in. In injury time, a Bellegarde effort was saved by Pickford, and Gomes put the rebound wide. Everton held on to win 3-2. Do people understand why I was down on Wolves yet? 3 league games so far, no points, and they now have to sit through an international break waiting for another chance. Their 2 goals were created by fooling Everton's back line, and it's getting to a point where they really just look quite bad, especially with the promoted teams looking a fair bit stronger than last season. Let's be fair to Everton though. I'll get into the good, but I do want to focus on their defence, conceding 2 to a Wolves team that hadn't scored in the league all season until now. James Tarkowski was very slow to react to Hwang's run, and he's already had some hairy moments so far. He gave away the decisive, albeit controversial, penalty against Leeds, and a horror back pass against Brighton had him lucky not to be punished. I think he's culpable again this time, to be honest. He can't be blamed for the second goal, but it was similar sluggishness, this time by Keane and Mykolenko, bizarrely failing to notice Gomes as he got the ball, which should have been cleared. They have played some profligate teams up to now. Leeds and Wolves haven't scored in the league, apart from against them. However, let's talk about the good. Everton score 3 goals, despite David Moyes' reputation for being an old school coach. For me, there is something often left out in the stereotyping about how managers from the Barclays era like to set things up. Rather than so called system players, in that era, individual talent was allowed to flourish, and I think that's what's happening with Jack Grealish. A superstar at Aston Villa, at Manchester City, despite his price tag, Grealish was ultimately just another player, expected to fulfill his role. People may criticise Pep Guardiola for this, but ultimately that strategy worked for him. It was less about individuality and more about cohesion. It is true that individuals who were stars at other clubs looked a fraction of their old self at the Etihad. Calvin Phillips is one example, but unlike Phillips, Grealish has recovered and has a league-leading 4 assists, remarkable as he only had a cameo in the first game. Without scoring, he's tied with Chelsea's Joao Pedro for the most G plus A. Grealish isn't the only individual to shine either, with Dewsbury Hall and Ndiaye playing well, and I think Beto has to have some credit for providing the balance. I think even though traditional number 9s are coming back in vogue, there has to be something said about the one who suffers for 90 minutes and lets others take the glory. He still got his goal though. A good job by Everton's front four, less so by their defence. As for Wolves, it's time to start panicking. At half 5, Leeds hosted Newcastle. I predicted both of Leeds' changes. Sean Longstaff and Lucas Nemecha in for Ayo Tanaka and Joel Pirro. For Newcastle, a swap to a back 5 with Sven Botman the extra attacker, with William Osula and Jacob Murphy also a new look attack. Anthony Gordon, Anthony Alanga, and Harvey Barnes were all absent. I predicted Jacob Ramsey replacing Joao Linton as well, the fourth change, while Sandro Tonali stayed in over Lewis Miley, as I thought. I was right that Osula would replace Gordon, but I didn't see the 2 wingers from their last game being dropped, nor Murphy or Botman coming in. Ramsey ran down the wing and found Osula, whose shot was blocked by Gabriel Goodmanson. Kieran Trippier found Murphy in the box, but his effort was saved by Lucas Perry. In the second half, a long-range effort by Murphy forced a save from Perry. Another effort from far out, this time by Lewis Hall, went over. Jayden Bogle fed Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but his shot was saved by Nick Pope. It finished goalless. A pretty awful game of football, and the second 0-0 draw Newcastle have been involved in. Remarkably, they had one game end in that scoreline in the entirety of the last 2 seasons, away to Everton about this time last year. Just like against Aston Villa, the Magpies had more of the ball but had only half chances with it, and they will really hope that now the Alexander Isak saga is over and they have a proper number 9 again in Nick Voltemada, more on him in the transfer section, they can look like their old selves. It's interesting that Newcastle only went for it with all guns blazing against Liverpool when they had 10 men. To put 5 at the back against newly promoted Leeds was desperate. Ilanga, who came on after an hour, was the only recognised forward on the bench too. They really need to rely on Voltemada and Johan Wisser. As for Leeds, this is a good point against the Champions League club, and they even had a good chance at the end. But Newcastle are finding it impossible to score, and in 3 league games, they have 1 goal, and that was from the spot. Basically, 4 points from 3 is a good return. Their abject display at the Emirates last week proved a lot about them, and I wouldn't feel safe yet if I was a Leeds fan. Anyway, the less said about that horrible quasi spectacle, the better. On to the Sunday 2 p.m. games, and Brighton hosted Man City. I thought Brighton would bring in Jorginho Ruta for Danny Welbeck, but they didn't, and made 2 changes I didn't predict. Jack Hinchelwood in for Yassin Ayari, and Diego Gomez replacing Matt O'Reilly. As for City, I didn't see Abdul Kadir Kusanov coming in for Ruben Dias, or Mateusz Nunes replacing Rico Lewis. Nor did I think Rodri would be ready to come in for Nico Gonzalez. I also thought Jeremy Doku would replace Omar Marmoush, but the Egyptian still started. I was right that Bernardo Silva would come in for Tiani Reinders. However, a Welbeck through ball found Kaoru Mitoma, who forced a save from James Trafford. A Ryan Ait Nuri cross found Erling Haaland, whose header was saved by Bart Verbruggen. In a crowded box, Marmoush forced his way forward and cleverly found Haaland through the legs of Lewis Dunk. Haaland finished it off for the opener. In the second half, Mitoma fed through Yankuba Minte, who forced a save from Trafford. From a free kick crossed in, Lewis Dunk's ball back across hit Nun's elbow, and a penalty was given. James Milner sent Trafford the wrong way to equalise. Minte showed some great feet to put himself in space, but curled it wide. A corner wasn't cleared and poked goalward by Jan-Paul van Hecke, taking a big deflection off of Rodri, but Trafford was there to save it. Mitoma fed through Brian Gruda, whose touch sat down both Ait Nouri and Trafford, and he rounded both to place it in and give Brighton a late win. This is more like the Brighton I thought we would see. At the outset, I predicted them to finish in the top 8, ahead of free-spending Man United, Europa League Nottingham Forest and others. However, in the first 2 games, they had looked pretty limp. They failed to put Fulham to bed and paid for it, and again were profligate in a 2-0 loss to Everton. A penalty was their only goal in those 2 games. Then, in midweek, they beat Championship Oxford 6-0. That was lower league opposition, though, so here was a real test and a chance to prove themselves. Prove it they did. But there are still some problems. In the first half, City were the better team, hitting Brighton on the break. Haaland scored 1, but could have had at least a brace and looked pretty routine. On the hour mark, though, Fabian Hürzeler made 4 changes. Carlos Baleba, Hinchelwood, Gomez, and Welbeck were replaced by Milner, Gruda, Ruta, and Ayari. It made all the difference, with both goals scored by subs. It was an Ayari cross which led to the penalty as well. On the other hand, an unwise sub by Pep Guardiola. Late on, he replaced Kusanov and Nunge with Diaz and Lewis. Lewis was caught out of position for the winner. Stones came across to half clear a ball, which should have been Lewis's job. It was headed straight back to Ruta, another Hürzeler sub, who played it straight back to Mitoma, being marked by Stones, but now out of position. The subs had a good impact for Brighton and a bad one for City. City now have 3 points from 3, and I'm vindicated about them already. Some have even suggested that Guardiola is entering his Wenger years. Remember, after Arsenal's invincible team was taken apart, Arsene Wenger had a few scraps left over, but the new generation he built failed to ever even challenge again. I think Guardiola is in the rebuild phase. What becomes of the new generation remains to be seen, but it's hard to think that Trafford would be as good as Ederson, or Ait Nouri and Nunge as good as Joao Cancelo and Carl Walker in any lifetime. They look like they're fighting for third, with Chelsea at best at the moment. In my other 2 p.m. game, Forest hosted West Ham. As predicted, Forest were unchanged, with Ibrahim Songare staying in ahead of Douglas Luiz. West Ham switched to a back 4 with Konstantinos Mavropanos in, and Naya Fagerd and Jean-Claude Tedibo both dropped. Carl Walker-Peters also came in for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. With the extra attacking spot, Mateusz Fernandes came in on the left, with Bowen moved out wide. I predicted Mavropanos coming in, specifically for Agard, but not the other 2 changes, nor the change in system. A long ball by Ola Aina found Danandoy in the space, but he was forced out wide, and his cutback was behind Chris Wood. Callum Hudson-Odoi ran down the left, and Carl Walker-Peters went to ground, but got enough of the ball to avoid sanction. Fernandes cut back to Lucas Paquetá, who forced a save from Matt Sells. In the second half, Callum Wilson's effort took a big deflection off of Murillo, but was tipped over by Sells. Crescencio Somerville ran forward and was brought down by Nikola Milenkovic. It fell to Bowen, whose first-time effort found the bottom corner. Somerville ran down the left into the box and was tripped by Songare for a penalty. Up stepped Paquetá, who waited for Sells to go and put it the other way. In injury time, an El Hadji Malik Diouf cross was headed down by Callum Wilson in to wrap up a 3-0 win. A scarcely believable result, and another that vindicates me, I think, even though I predicted Forest to win. I thought the Irons would be bad but fine and stay up, and held firm despite 3 losses in 3 games in all competitions. It also is a feather in the cap of Graham Potter, who switched from 3-4-1-2 to 4-2-3-1 and was rewarded for it. Potter likes to control games and focuses on possession football, but switched to a direct style. In the Guardiola-dominated 2010s, the hipsters absolutely love Potter, but even he is moving away from that type of footy. Mavropanos and Maximilian Kilman stayed back, and everyone else clogged up the midfield and tried to go forward in numbers. And it smothered Nottingham Forest, who weren't expecting it and had no answers. West Ham got their goals late on, 84, 88 and 90 plus 1. West Ham have their own talent, especially in Bowen and Paquetá, but I like that in this game they stopped Forest, who have a considerable amount of their own. In this division, frustrating your opponent is crucial. This is a sobering result for Nottingham Forest, though. They were taken out of the game, with Nuno Espirito Santo outsmarted by Graham Potter in what turned out to be his final game at the City Ground. Despite being at home with better players, they were frustrated and couldn't even hold on for the draw, and the final score was embarrassing. In the half-4 kickoff, Liverpool hosted Arsenal. The host made one change, and I got the identity of the player taken out. Curtis Jones correct, but Alexis McAllister came in, not Connor Bradley, and Dominic Soboslai stayed at right back. Arsenal made 2 changes. I didn't see Mikel Merino coming in for Martin Odegaard, but I did get Gabriel Martinelli replacing Bukayo Saka, with Noni Madueke switching wing. A collision with Hugo Ekitike saw William Saliba off and replaced by Christian Mosquera. Cody Hekpo ran down the left, cut inside and fired wide. From a corner, Noni Madueke forced a save from Alisson Becker. A long ball by David Raya found Madueke, but his shot was deflected over by Milos Kerkez. A block shot was deflected into the path of Ricardo Calafiori and put wide following a touch by Ibrahima Konate. In the second half, a Florian Wirtz shot was spilt by Raya, and Cody Hekpo got there before the Arsenal keeper could recover before Ekitike fired in. However, Hekpo was offside. From a long free kick, Soboslai found the top corner off the post. In injury time, a long throw by Calafiori hit Soboslai on the arm, but it was not a deliberate handball. It finished 1-0 to Liverpool. I think many people saw this as Arsenal's just desserts for playing conservatively, and I think both managers coached a 0-0, but Mikel Arteta did in particular. Taking out Odegaard for Marino is seen as quite negative, and it's clear that Arteta saw not losing as more important than going for the win. Even though Liverpool have been shaky at the back this season, Arteta chose not to try and build an end-to-end game like we saw Liverpool play against Newcastle and Bournemouth, plus the Community Shield against Palace. In those 3 games, the Reds conceded two in each, but here they kept their clean sheet. I actually think the strategy kind of worked. Arsenal still probably looks the more adventurous of the two, though neither goalie really had anything to do. Dominic Soboslai has been really strong as a stand-in for the injured Jeremy Frimpong, though, and capped off this brief moment in time when the Hungarian was a right-back with a moment of quality. That was the difference between 2 tentative sides. One moment of class worth a 3-point swing in the title race. Sometimes you fight all game for 1, sometimes 1 kick of the ball is worth 3. Soboslai looks a better right-back than Frimpong at the moment because he can defend as well as come forward. Liverpool are vulnerable on the break, but Arteta chose to slow it down, hoping to control the midfield battle, and got stung by a moment of magic. On another day, the ball would have bounced favourably for Arsenal. Soboslai's free kick felt 1 in a million, the same way Declan Rice scoring 2 against Real Madrid did a few months ago. As for what it means in the title race, obviously 3 points are important, but it's not over. Firstly, Arsenal still look strong in the back. With that goal, the only one they've conceded. That is to say, in 3 games, they haven't let in one that wasn't from a set piece. To be fair, of their 6 goals, 5 were against Leeds, 3 were corners, and 1 was a penalty. But Bukayo Saka is coming back, with Eberechi Eze making his debut here off the bench, but surely starting after the international break. Don't count the Gunners out. Liverpool have won 3 games in the league, but it's too early to call them the winners. They have fought hard to get those victories, and they have played some quality opposition, but ultimately the fundamentals do look a bit shaky. Their attacking quality is huge, but they're vulnerable on the break. The final word. This means that you can't completely discount everyone else. Though City have looked a bit rubbish, Chelsea are also going for it, and who knows if the likes of Spurs or someone else could spring a surprise. In the 7 p.m. match, Aston Villa hosted Palace. Villa made a few changes. I didn't see Marco Bizzo coming in for Emiliano Martinez, but was correct that Ezri Konsa would replace Pau Torres. I didn't think Luca Digne would be replaced by Ian Martin, or that Amadou Onana and Boubacar Kamara would be switched for Evan Gesson and Daniel Marlin, with John McGinn and Yuri Tielemans moving back to cover. I did get Marlin right, but thought Lamar Bogard would also come in and McGinn would stay forward. For Palace, I predicted two changes. Daichi Kamada did replace Justin Deveni, but Jefferson Lerma did not unseat Will Hughes. As Palace broke, Matty Cash brought down Kamada, earning a yellow card. VAR did look at it, but upheld the booking. A through ball by Mateta set up Kamada, who rounded Bizzo but was brought down by the Villa keeper for a penalty. Mateta sent Bizzo the wrong way to put Palace in front. A long ball by John McGinn was poked by Ollie Watkins straight at Dean Henderson. In the second half, a long-range effort from Tielemans forced a save by Henderson. A Morgan Rogers effort was deflected by Chris Richards, but still saved by Henderson. A cross that wasn't cleared properly came to Mark Gay, who found the top corner to double the Palace lead. A long throw headed on by Maxence Lacroix was then headed in by Ismail Assar. It finished 3-0 to Palace. Wow, what a shocker for Aston Villa. Last week I said that them and Brighton were the real duds this season, but Brighton then went on to beat City. Not so for Villa, who are now the only team to not score a single goal this season. A 0-0 draw against Newcastle was a decent result, especially with 10 men, but losing to a mediocre Brentford, and now this is really worrying, and that's before they've even started playing on Thursdays. They've tried to freshen things up with wide players Marlon and Gesson, but Crystal Palace overloaded the middle and countered easily. It was a victory for Oliver Glasner over Unai Emery, who is finding things tough at the moment. For Palace, it's an unbeaten start to the season with 6 games in all competitions. They still don't look like world beaters, but they can take advantage of bigger clubs' weaknesses. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this catch up from before the international break. On Saturday, I did all right with a correct score in the early kickoff and also rightly getting United and Everton winning, albeit not predicting the 3-2 scorelines. I didn't think Spurs would be so useless, and I also saw a 1-all draw at the Stadium of Light, which was stolen from me in injury time. I thought Newcastle would find a goal, but they didn't. On Sunday, though, no luck. I thought City and Forest would win, but both were stunned, while I thought there'd be a draw at Anfield and Villa Park. Overall, 1 correct score and 2 correct results. A tough week. All right, now it's time for the transfer deadline day recap, and there was a lot to get through. Arsenal signed Piero Insapié from Bayer Leverkusen. In 4 seasons in Germany, the versatile defender played 166 times since signing from Talleres in 2021. He also has 48 caps for Ecuador. Albert Sambi Laconga was sold to Hamburg for £2.6 million or €3 million. He signed from Anderlecht in 2021, but spent the last 2.5 seasons on loans with Crystal Palace, Luton and Sevilla. Jakob Kivior has been loaned to Porto for £1.7 million or €2 million, with an option to buy for £14.7 million plus £4.3 million, or €17 million plus €5 million, plus a £1.7 million or €2 million sell-on clause. Kivior played 30 times last season for Arsenal, but normally as a rotation player. Alexander Zinchenko is loaned to Nottingham Forest for an undisclosed fee. He joined Man City from Ufa in 2016, and after a loan at PSV, played 128 times for City before switching to North London in 2022, where he played 91 times, but saw his minutes decrease last season. The defender also has 73 caps for Ukraine. Fabio Vieira is loaned to Hamburg with an option to buy for £17.3 million or €20 million. Vieira was signed from Porto in 2022, but loaned back there last season. Reece Nelson joins Brentford on loan with an option to buy. An Arsenal Academy product, the forward has played for the Gunners 90 times, but also has had loans to Hoffenheim, Feyenoord, and last season Fulham, where he played 12 times. Academy player Lucas Nygaard gets a new contract. Arsenal focused on contract talks with Bukayo Saka and William Saliba, with both having their current deals up at the end of next season. Aston Villa have signed Victor Lindelof from Man United on a free. The centre-back signed from Benfica in 2017 and played 284 times for the Red Devils, but often as a rotation option. He also has 71 Sweden caps. Also, academy player Fletcher Boyd has come in from Aberdeen for £1 million. Attacking midfielder Harvey Elliott has come on loan from Liverpool. He signed from Fulham in 2019 and played 149 times for the Reds, but saw his minutes decrease last season. Left winger Jadon Sancho has joined on loan from Man United. He signed from Borussia Dortmund in 2021 and played 83 times, but after 2 seasons was sent on loan, first back to Dortmund and then last season to Chelsea, where he made 41 appearances. He also has 23 England caps, but none since 2021. Samuel Illing Jr. has been loaned to West Brom, having spent last season on loans at Bologna and Middlesbrough since signing from Juventus last year. New signing Zepikenio Redmond has been loaned to Huddersfield after joining from Feyenoord. Two youngsters have also been given loans. There were links with Man United for Emiliano Martinez after he missed the Palace game, but this did not materialise after the Red Devils went with another option. Villa's lack of permanent deals are said to be because of financial rules, with Esri Konsa blaming them for having killed the club. Bournemouth have signed centre-back Velko Milosavljevic from Red Star Belgrade for £30 million. He was on dual registration with second-tier Grafic Beograd last season and played a total of 26 times for both clubs at just 18 years of age. Right-back Alex Jimenez joined from AC Milan on loan after playing 28 times for the Rossoneri last season. Youngster Zayn Selkot Dubary, who played twice at Bournemouth, was sold to Olympiacos for an undisclosed sum. Meanwhile, Hamid Traore, who joined from Sassuolo after a loan in 2023 but played just 7 times for Bournemouth since and spent last season on loan at Auxerre, is loaned again, this time to Marseille. Youngster Ben Winterburn, who has 7 appearances, is loaned to League Two Barnet. Meanwhile, Roman Farther, who has made 6 appearances since signing in 2023 and spent last season at Brest, now joins Al Tawoun on a loan. Youngster Noah Boutin also is loaned to Sutton for half a season. Brentford have signed 2 youngsters, while also loaned in winger Reece Nelson from Arsenal. Forward Johan Wissa was sold to Newcastle for £55 million. Since signing from Lorient in 2021, Wissa played 149 times for Brentford, scoring 49 goals, 20 of those last season. He also has 35 caps for DR Congo. Wissa has said the club was promised could go and was exiled from the first team as a result. Brighton have sold Julio Enciso to Strasbourg for an undisclosed sum. Enciso played 57 times since joining from Libertad in 2022, but spent the second half of last season on loan at Ipswich. Tariq Lamptey is sold to Fiorentina for £5.2 million. Lamptey played 122 times since signing from Chelsea in 2020, but mostly as a rotation player. Youngster Adrian Mazzulu is also signed to Dinamo Bucharesti. Attacking midfielder Facundo Buonanotte is loaned to Chelsea. Buonanotte was signed from Rosario Central in 2022, but spent last season on loan at Leicester. He also has 2 Argentina caps. Centre-back Igor Julio joins West Ham on loan. Julio signed from Fiorentina 3 years ago, but played just 16 times last season. Winger Jeremy Sarmiento, who spent last season on loan at Burnley, now joins Cremonese for the season. Matt O'Reilly, who joined from Celtic last season and played 25 times, now joins Marseille on loan. 2 youngsters also got loans. Burnley have signed academy player Oshin Cooney from Finn Harps for free. Darkut Cherlinov, who spent the last 2 seasons on loan, is sold to Kosoelispor for an undisclosed fee. Youngster Julian Vetro is also sold to Sochaux. Forward Florentino Luis is loaned in from Benfica. He has played 183 times for his boyhood club, including 45 last season. Michael Obafemi, who spent last season on loan at Plymouth, is now loaned to Bochum in Germany. Aaron Ramsey, who played once last season, is loaned to Leicester. Manuel Benson played 14 times in the last 2 seasons put together and is now loaned to Swansea. 3 youth players also got EFL loans. Chelsea signed left winger Alejandro Garnacho from Man United. The academy product scored 26 times in 144 games since graduating from the academy. He also has 8 Argentina caps and joins for £40 million. Left back Ishe Samuel Smith joins from Strasbourg for an undisclosed sum just weeks after being sold by Chelsea to them. He has never made a senior appearance. 3 academy players came in too, and Buonanotte also joins from Brighton on loan for £2 million. Christopher Nkunku is sold to AC Milan for £32 million plus £4 million in add-ons after playing 48 times last season and scoring 15 goals. Ben Chilwell, who played just 11 times on loan to Palace last season, is sold to Strasbourg for an undisclosed fee. Youngster Alex Matos is also sold to Sheffield United. Nicholas Jackson, who scored 13 times in 37 games last season, is loaned to Bayern Munich for £14.3 million with a conditional obligation to buy based on appearances. 6 youngsters also got loans, while Mark Guyu's loan to Sunderland was recalled. Tyreek George was close to joining Fulham, while Emmanuel Omega is expected to join from Strasbourg next year. Axel Disasi and Raheem Sterling remain exiled. Meanwhile, the Blues have faced charges due to agent payments, while the referees admitted that ruling out Josh King's goal against them was an error. Crystal Palace have signed defender JD Canvo from Toulouse for £17.5 million. The teenager played 16 times last season. Striker Christantas Uche, who has 2 caps for Nigeria, joins on a season-long loan from Getafe. Odson Edouard, who was loaned to Leicester last season, is sold to Lens for an undisclosed fee. The Eagles targeted Igor Julio to replace Mark Gay, but when that collapsed, Gay's move to Liverpool was cancelled. Everton have signed Merlin Rule on loan from Freiburg with an obligation to buy. The midfielder played 60 times for them since joining from Ingolstadt in 2022. Yusuf Shermiti has been sold to Rangers for £10 million after playing just 4 times last season. Tyler Onyango, who has 4 senior Toffees appearances, joined Stockport on loan after spending last season there too. Harrison Armstrong, who's played for Everton 6 times and was at Derby last season, is now loaned to Preston. 2 youngsters also got loans. Jordan Pickford is having talks over a new contract, while Jack Grealish was named Premier League Player of the Month for August. The referees also admitted that Everton robbed Wolves because Iliman and Dye did not have a penalty given against him for a challenge on Hugo Bueno. Fulham have signed left-winger Kevin from Shakhtar Donetsk for £34.6 million. The Brazilian scored 9 times in 35 games in Ukraine last season. Samuel Chukwueze has joined on loan from AC Milan with an option to buy. The right-winger played 69 times and scored 8 since joining from Villarreal in 2023 and has 7 goals in 46 caps for Nigeria. Striker Jonah Kusiasare joins from Bayern Munich on loan with an option to buy. He had 2 appearances for the senior team in Germany and is just 18. Leeds sold Darko Gyabi to Hull on a free. Gyabi spent the last 2 seasons on loan at Plymouth. Liverpool signed forward Alexander Isak from Newcastle for £125 million. He scored 62 goals in 109 games for the Magpies since joining in 2022. He also has 16 in 53 caps for Sweden. Kostas Tsimikas, who played 29 times last season, is loaned to Roma. With Elliott loaned to Villa, youngster Emmanuel Iroboma gets his first pro contract. Man City have sold goalie Gianluigi Donnarumma from PSG for £26 million. He played 161 times since joining from AC Milan in 2021 and also has 76 caps for Italy. Goalie Ederson is sold to Fenerbahce for £12 million after playing 376 times for City since joining in 2017 from Benfica. Ilkay Gundogan, who played 54 times last season since rejoining from Barcelona, moves to Galatasaray on a free. Academy player Michael Okeke is sold to Puskas Academica. Manuel Akanji, who played 40 times last season, is loaned to Inter Milan, while Josh Wilson Esbrand, who spent last season at Stoke, gets a loan to Radomiak Radom. 4 youngsters also get loans, while Rico Lewis has signed a new contract, taking him to 2030. Meanwhile, City have ended a dispute with the Premier League over sponsorships. Man United have signed Sene Lammers for a reported £18.1 million plus add-ons. The keeper played 62 times for Royal Antwerp since joining in 2023. Garnacho was sold to Chelsea for a reported £40 million. Anthony is sold to Real Betis for a reported £19.06 million with £2.59 million in add-ons. He spent the second half of last season on loan there. Youngster Zach Bauman joins Norwich for free, but with performance-based add-ons. Rasmus Højlund, who scored 10 in 52 games last season, is loaned to Napoli. Harry Amas, who played 7 times last season, is loaned to Sheffield Wednesday. Sancho has gone to Aston Villa. Youngster Ethan Ennis has joined Fleetwood. Andre Onana, who has played 102 times, signing in 2023, joins Trabzonspor on loan. Newcastle have signed striker Nick Voltemada from Stuttgart for £69 million. He scored 17 times in 33 games last season and also has 4 Germany caps. Also, Wissa joins from Brentford for £55 million. Youngster Vakhtang Salia also joined from Dinamo Tbilisi. Isak is sold to Liverpool for £125 million, while 2 academy players get loans. Nottingham Forest signed right back Nicolo Savona from Juventus for £11.2 million plus £2.2 million in add-ons. He played 40 times for the Old Lady last season. Goalie John Victor joins Botafogo for £6.9 million after playing 84 times since joining in 2024. Left-back Cuiabano joins from the same club for an undisclosed fee. He represented Botafogo 59 times. Dylan Bakwa joins from Strasbourg for an undisclosed fee. The right winger scored 9 in 69 since joining in 2023. 3 youngsters also joined, plus Zinchenko on loan. Meanwhile, Eric da Silva Moreira, who has 5 appearances, joins Rio Ave on loan, as does Omar Richards, who was there last season too. Cuiabano was loaned back to Botafogo until New Year, while Jota Silva, who played 37 times last season, joins Besiktas on loan. 2 youngsters were also loaned out. Meanwhile, striker Emmanuel Dennis, who was on loan at Blackburn last season, was released, as was Josh Bowler, who was on loan at Preston. Callum Hudson-Odoi got a new contract until 2028. The main story, though, is the sacking of manager Nuno Espirito Santo after falling out with the owner, and he was replaced by Ange Postecoglou. Former Australian international Postecoglou joined Western Suburbs in 1994, briefly as a player manager in his homeland's lower leagues, before joining South Melbourne in 1996 after retiring. He won 2 National Soccer League titles, being Coach of the Year in 1998 and the 1999 Oceania Club Championship, earning him the Australia Sports Medal. In 2000, he left to become Australia under-17 boss, moving to the under-20s in 2005, but left after failing to qualify for the 2007 Under-20 World Cup. He won 3 Oceanian titles at both age groups, plus a Southeast Asian under-20 title. He then went to Panachaiki in the Greek lower leagues and Whittlesea Zebras back home, before
before returning to top-tier football with Brisbane Roar. There, he won the A-League Championship twice and also the Premiership for winning the regular season, moving to MW3 in 2012, but before that being named both Australia and A-League Manager of the Year. In 2013, he joined Australia's national team, winning the 2015 Asian Cup and being named Asian Manager of the Year and Australian Coach of the Decade. He left in 2017 and joined Yokohama F. Marinos in 2018, winning the J1 League in 2019 before joining Celtic in 2021. There he won 2 leagues, a Scottish Cup and a League Cup, also winning 7 Manager of the Month gongs and 2 Managers of the Year from both players and writers. In 2022, he was added to the Australia Football Hall of Fame and made manager of the country's Team of the Century. In 2023, he joined Spurs, where he won the Europa League last season, won 3 Manager of the Months and also became London Manager of the Year. However, he was sacked at the end of the season and now joins Forest. Sunderland signed striker Brian Brobby from Ajax for £21.3 million. Brobby scored 50 times in 144 games for Ajax since joining from RB Leipzig, first on loan and then permanently, and also has 8 caps for the Netherlands. Right winger Bertrand Traore joins from the same club for £2.5 million. He scored 10 in 49 for them last season and has 22 in 84 caps for Burkina Faso. Lutjarel Geertruida joins on loan from RB Leipzig for £2.5 million plus an option to buy for £18 million. The right back played 35 times last season in Germany after signing from Feyenoord and has played 17 times for the Netherlands. Guyu's loan was terminated by Chelsea. Youngster Oliver Bainbridge is loaned to South Shields until January. Alan Brown, who played 23 times last season, is loaned to Middlesbrough, while Noel Huggins joins Wickham on loan. Patrick Roberts, who played 48 times last season, is loaned to Birmingham, while Jensen Selt, who has played twice this season, is loaned to Wolfsburg. Nazari Rushin, who spent the second half of last season on loan to Hajduk Split, is now with Arka Gdynia on loan, while Milan Alexic joins Cracovia on loan with an option to buy. Spurs have signed forward Randall Kolo-Muani on loan from PSG. He spent the second half of last season on loan at Juventus, where he scored 10 in 22, and has 9 in 31 for France. Meanwhile, Brian Hill, who was on loan at Girona last season, is sold there permanently for £8.6 million. Manos Solomon, who spent last season on loan at Leeds, is now loaned to Villarreal. The big news at Spurs is Daniel Levy's removal as executive chairman. Though the post is to be abolished, chief executive Vinay Katsaham is expected to be the new boss. Despite this internal shuffling, Spurs have said they're not for sale despite 2 expressions of interest. West Ham have signed defensive midfielder Songotu Magasa for £17.3 million, having played 57 times for his boyhood club Monaco. Meanwhile, young Paris FC centre-back Dimitri Kolau joins for an undisclosed sum, with Julio joining on loan. Emerson Palmieri, who played 31 times last season, is sold to Marseille for £605,000, while Naif Agad, who played 28 times, goes to the same club for £19.925 million. Unused goalie West Foderingham joins Aris Limassol for an undisclosed sum. Julia Robinson, who spent last season on loan at Sutton, now joins Livingston on loan, while Lewis Orford, who played twice last season, joins Stevenage. Maxwell Cornet was loaned to Genoa last season and joins them again on loan, while youngster Finley Herrick gets a loan to Boreham Wood. Goalie Łukasz Fabianski has signed a new contract. Meanwhile, Lucas Paquetá was acquitted of betting charges and the FA said they would not appeal. Wolves has signed striker Tolu Adokodare for £24 million from Henk, for whom he scored 23 times in 45 games last season. He also has 5 Nigeria caps. Youngster Harvey Griffiths joins Lincoln on loan for a half season, while Dexter Lembikisa, who spent last season at Ibadan Sport and Barnsley, is loaned to Lincoln for a half season. Pedro Lima played just 6 times and is loaned to Porto, while Sasha Kalajdzic is loaned to Lask after playing just 13 times. Newcastle were connected with Jurgen Strand-Larsen, but signed Voltemado and Wisser instead, and Strand-Larsen is expected to be offered a new contract. Wow, that took a while, and I'm glad there isn't another deadline day for a while now. Thanks for watching.